Hey everybody, Black Ninja 797 here, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you guys some tips and tricks for how to get better at Fortnite. The reason why I'm doing this is because this is a request by a subscriber, so I decided to end up making the video to try to help out some of you guys in case you guys are not necessarily the best at Fortnite but you want to get better. And I hope that these tips end up being useful for you guys. So I have 5 main tips here. They're not in any particular order necessarily, but these tips in general I think are overall, good tips for everybody of all play styles. No matter how you play Fortnite, these will come in handy. And even though a lot of them may seem repetitive, I'm going to elaborate on some of them so that way you guys exactly know what I mean. So let's talk about the first thing, and that is sound. When you have a match of Fortnite, one of the biggest factors about whether you're going to live or not is the sound. If you can hear footsteps, you will be in a big advantage over your enemies than, compared to like someone without a headset. So if you have a headset that's even semi-decent, like a Turtle Beach, or even if you have something like Astros, or some just overall decent headset, you can be able to end up hearing footsteps, and then therefore you will have an advantage compared to somebody that's playing through like their speakers. So if you have a semi-decent headset, like Turtle Beaches or Astros or anything like that, I highly recommend using that headset and just trying to be kind of as quiet as possible. Try not to have too much noise around you. If people are talking, make sure that they only just talk for call-outs, stuff like that. That way you have the big advantage of being able to hear people coming, and that way they don't know that you're ready, and then you can just pop a cap in them. It's just an easy way to take advantage of that. I don't recommend playing through speakers. I don't recommend earbuds. I don't recommend anything of the sort. I just recommend a flat-out headset. It's the best, and it works the best for everybody, in my opinion. Now let's talk about the second thing. And the second thing is where to drop. Now, when it comes to where to drop in Fortnite, you have tons and tons of locations. You can go to Tilted Towers, you can go to Pleasant Park, you can go to the motel, you can go to the racetrack, you can even land in some really obscure areas where there just happens to be a random chest, or like the shrines, anything. You can land in some of the most good areas and some of the worst areas at the same time. It all depends on the luck of the storm, the luck of the amount of people that go there, and in general, what loot is there. These are 3 big contributing factors. Now, overall, this kind of goes into opinion about like what is the best best spot to land. And this doesn't work every time because of 2 main reasons, and that's number 1, how many people are going to land there, and the storm. In general, you can kind of have a guess on the loot, and that's kind of like the main factor about this part, is because we all know for a fact that Tilted has the biggest amount of loot. But the thing is, though, is that it's a high traffic area, and it means that you're very likely going to die. And it's also in the middle of the map, surrounded by some other popular areas. So that's why Tilted's risky. It's a high risk, high reward. And also, depending on where the storm comes from, you may be far away from the storm, even in the area that you pick. You could land all the way over at Haunted Hills, and then the Moisty Mire is, like, for some reason, the circle, like that designated area. And you have to travel all the way across the map. It's just a sheer numbers game. But what I recommend for you to do to land in an area that will help you out in the long run is that when you pick an area, no matter what it is, try to land first. And by landing first, I mean trying to jump actually before you're actually near the area. This little thing helps out so much. If you're, like, let's say on the way to Dusty Depot, you want to jump around the small factory. You jump about 1 area right before the actual area you intend to go. So that way, you actually will land, and then therefore you'll be closer to the actual objective before anybody else. Because if you land as soon as you're above the area, it's going to take you a while to fall down and then automatically open your chute. And when you open up the chute, you still have to fall. And everybody that actually ended up landing before you and kind of went at like a diagonal angle, they can come in first and therefore get the first set of guns. They can land on a roof, open the chest, get a gun, and they can shoot you before you even know it. It's a very big risk factor when it comes to this, because if you don't land first, you don't know where a gun is, you may not even have a gun, you don't know how many people are going to be there, you don't know if a guy has a good gun or a bad gun, whatever. But if you can land first, no matter despite the storm, no matter despite the amount of people, and no matter despite the loot, in general, you're better off landing first because you can get the loot quicker no matter what it is, and you can also counteract what's going to happen. If you're like surprisingly like really far away from the storm, you can land, get a decent gun, and then get out, and then you're on your way. And depending on how many people there are, you can just try to make sure that you try to hide from them or challenge them depending on a certain instance. You can make it work just depending if you land quick enough. The next thing is building. I've had this problem for the longest time because I play on console. It's much easier to build on PC than it is on console, and I will admit that. But console, you still need to build despite if it's not as good. Now the thing is with the building is that there is no controller layout where you can set a certain button to a certain buildable tool or anything like that. It's all based off of just the way that the default control layouts are. You have like normal and then some other couple ones, but I use default just because I try to get used to default on all my games. Now when it comes to this, you want to get good at building despite the fact that it's not good on console. I get pretty good compared to what I used to be. In fact, you're actually watching a old gameplay of, my Fortnite games that I have on my hard drive, and this is an old gameplay where I didn't really build that much. And you can see that even when I'm not building, I'm still doing well, but I could be doing better. That's the thing, is that anybody can get a kill in Fortnite even if you don't build, but you do significantly better if you can build. You want to get a lot of wood, you want to get a lot of brick, you want to get a lot of metal, and if you have all these materials, it will give you 3 benefits. Number 1, you can have a giant base. This is obvious, everybody knows that one of the things that help you win in Fortnite is just making a giant base. If you can make a base that's gigantic, functions well, flows well, sorry about my phone, but if you can make a base that functions well, flows well, and it's very, very sturdy, so that way people don't shoot it down with a grenade launcher or end up sneaking into your base and trying to kill you that way. If you can have a decent base, that's another thing that will help you win. The second thing with having a lot of material is that it will allow you to make a buildable on the fly. If you're getting shot at from who knows where, and you're getting shot with a sniper, you have no idea where somebody is, you can randomly just surprisingly make a quick fort and guard yourself and heal, shield up, or even in mid-gunfight you can actually make a base and actually get the high ground and get an advantage on people, which is the last thing, and this is a big contributing factor to how you win Fortnite games, the high ground. The high ground ties into the building and why you need resources. It doesn't matter if it's wood, brick, metal, the high ground is key in Fortnite without a doubt. Because if you're above people, you can see them more compared to what they can see to you. You can actually end up shooting down on people from random directions where they don't even know you're coming from, so it's hard to capitalize on that when you're on the bottom half. And it's an easy way that you can end up scoring easy W's because you see everybody, they have like a very hard time shooting you based off the angle, and it's an easy way to head glitch because when you end up getting on like a ramp, for example, your head is the only thing that they can see, but you can see all of them because the laser, or like the lasering effect that people use in Fortnite, that term, it's because the way that video games work for first person or even third person perspectives, because the bullets, even though they come out of the gun, the damage comes out of the eyes, so that way it's in first person perspective, and that's why head glitching exists. So that's why you want to be able to build on the fly and be able to do these things. Now another thing that I also want to talk about when it comes to Fortnite, and this is kind of another RNG thing, but if you can do this one thing, it will help you out a lot in the long run. And I wanted to dedicate a whole entire thing to the storm. Now I know that I was talking about like areas to land and whatever, and I was mentioning the storm previously, but the storm does play a big key factor. Now when it comes to the storm, you definitely don't want to be in the storm, but you also at the same time don't need to necessarily be in the circle. Now let me elaborate on this and basically explain what I mean. When you're playing Fortnite, and let's say that's the very beginning of the game, the storm hasn't come in yet, everyone's just landing at their area, you have no idea where the storm is going to be coming from, right? So you end up going into an area, let's say theoretically, you land in an area and the storm's kind of far away, so you don't have to worry about it necessarily for now. But let's say you're one of the very unlucky people and you land somewhere that's completely the exact opposite of where the circle is, and you land in the storm based off of your luck. If you end up landing in the storm, you need to act quickly because the storm is a mind game of its own. When you end up playing Fortnite and you have the circle advantage, it's a big contributing factor of how well you'll do. Because let's give a scenario so that way I can list this better. Let's talk about if you landed at, I'm actually going to give 2 examples as a matter of fact. Let's say the first one, you land at Snobby Shores, and you land there and that's the circle. Like let's say you have the circle, you have it to your advantage, and everybody that's on the right half of the map has to come to you. It's a big thing to have the circle because if you have the circle, people come to you and you can prepare and wait for them The second thing is that when you have the circle, there is no risk of either getting stuck in it and losing health, or no worry about people necessarily being behind you, depending on the area too. And the next thing that when it comes to the storm is that when you have the storm, you can prepare a base ahead of time because you don't have to leave your base. If you're in the storm, you have to either move your base, regen your health / shields, and you also have to worry about people sandwiching you. These are big factors about why sometimes people die. Because if you were in the other example, which I'm about to list now, let's say that you were all the way over at Snobby yet again, but you had no idea that you were going to be completely screwed, and then that the storm was going to be right next to you, and that you're basically going to have to immediately run to the other half of the map. Now, if that happens, the beginning of the storm, depending on the direction, you want to make sure that you end up avoiding it anyways. It doesn't matter whether it's the fast storm or the slow storm. You just want to get out of the storm at all, because if it's all the way across the map till the next circle, you want to book it, because if you don't, you have the risk, like I said, of getting sandwiched, having to leave your base, and also the fact that you may have to waste your health and even sometimes your ammo because you have to get into gunfights mid-storm. I've seen that happen before, especially at Tilted, where people leave Tilted only when the storm shows up. So you want to make sure that you're on the go. Don't loot a chest because you see it off in the distance as some random thing that people ignored. Don't stay because you think that the circle's going to end up not coming in as fast. Don't stay because you think you're alone, because when you think you're safe is when you're really not. And I've had that way too many times where I've wanted to go for a chest, I think I can outweight the storm, and I end up getting killed by the storm actually itself. And another thing that contributes to it is that depending on which side you're on, the storm will either come faster and do more damage or slower and do less. If you have that moment where, let's say there's the storm, a big circle, and then the small circle, the actual next circle, a lot more space before you can actually get to the circle, or like a longer walk before you actually can get to the next circle, you're on the fast side and the storm comes in quicker and actually does more damage compared to the side that's got a less walkway, or it's got like less ways to walk. Then it's actually slower and does less damage. So that's another thing about why you want to be ahead of the storm, because that way you can prepare and you don't have to worry about that. Because I've had way too many times, like I said, where people shoot me in the back because we think that we can outweigh the storm, or we end up thinking, something else, just whatever, that end up making us think we're safe. So make sure that you never end up staying in the storm, because the storm will always kill you. I know this is an obvious one, and one of the things that you want to make sure is that you want to be as close to the middle as possible, so that way you don't have to leave your base, because towards end game, if you have to leave your base and go right out in the open, that's another big thing. And now the last thing that I want to elaborate on is plays. Now, what do I mean by plays? I mean basically out-juking somebody. Now, there's multiple ways that you can do this. You can either be stealthy, you can be aggressive, you can be passive-aggressive. There's many play styles that you can end up doing in Fortnite that can end up helping you win. No style is necessarily guaranteed, but some are better than others. Now, am I encouraging you to camp as a bush? No. Am I encouraging you to basically go Rambo and hope that you don't die? No. I'm not saying either of those. I'm basically saying you want to be in a scenario where you can feel confident and challenge somebody, whether it's solo, duos, squads, and not feel like you're basically going to die. I don't want you to feel like you have to camp, and I don't want you to feel like you have to rush. I want you to feel comfortable in all the decisions you make. So when it comes to juking out somebody, the best way that you can do this is, number one, have the buildables, like I said, because all these tips actually end up combining into one in a second here. You want to have enough buildables so that way you can end up making a fort on the fly if somebody's trying to rush you, and that way you can eventually get the high ground and stack upon them. You also want to make sure that you end up having enough shields and health, because one of the things that people underestimate is that they're like, oh yeah, I have enough shields and health right now where I'm basically at max, and they have extras that are right in front of them, but they don't take it. I save personally 2 slots of my inventory for just shields and health, so that way if I get shot for whatever reason, I can actually end up regenning my health and also my shields. Because if I don't take them and I lose them, and then I'm getting shot at again, that's a big risk, because then I have no shields to get my health back, no shields to get my shields back, and no health kits to get my health back. You want to have extra shields and extra health as a liability. For example, like what just happened in the gameplay. That guy happened to drop some shields, But if there was no shields, I would have no armor, and I would have to worry about actually running around with barely any health left. You want to have it, not necessarily for the now, but for the later. You want to have the shields and the health just as a backup, so that way if you get shot, which you probably will, because there's no way that you're just going to be basically immortal in Fortnite. It's very hard to do that. You want to make sure that you have it just in case. It's a backup, basically. And when you end up wanting to juke somebody out, try to build ramps above them, try to build yourself off sometimes, try to trap them in, try to place traps, try to end up crouching because your crosshair gets smaller. You want to basically outplay people. This can come to many different types of tips, many different types of advice. But overall, all the tips I listed basically combined into one. You don't want to just do one thing, you want to do all of these things. So when you run into somebody, whether it is in solos, duos, squads, overall the best thing that you can do for you and your team is that you want to make sure that you're outplaying people. Make sure you're crouching, so that way your crosshairs are tighter. Make sure you share your shields and health. Make sure you share ammo. Make sure you try to get the high ground. Make sure you try to avoid the storm. Make sure that you guys try to do all these things, so that way eventually you guys will be in the habit of doing it, and that way you guys don't have to worry about thinking about it. You're just actually doing it without even thinking about it. It's basically a melody that you want to get into the rhythm of, so that way you don't have a moment where you don't remember how much ammo you have, or you don't remember how quick the storm's coming in, or you don't remember your material left, because this all is a basically life or death scenario here when it comes to Fortnite. It's basically the Hunger Games, but in a cartoony video game. You could be the only person in your lobby if you're in solos or even in squads, and it's all up to you to challenge that many other people. So make sure that you're very careful when you play Fortnite. These are personally my best tips that I can give you guys to help you out with Fortnite. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Like I said, if I haven't said it already, I hope you guys did enjoy these tips. I wanted to basically make this that way in case any of you guys that were having possibly some struggles with Fortnite could get better, and you can have more fun and actually end up getting a W if you haven't yet. So I hope that these tips were useful to you guys. I hope you guys did end up enjoying the video, and you could even also see how I got trolled here back in one of my old gameplays, how someone just took my base out. He just basically just took out the fulcrum and ended up killing me. Or I believe that he just ended up like having a grenade launcher or something like that. But either way, he destroyed my base, which kind of sucked. But anyways, guys, this is today's video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe for more awesome videos coming each and every day. Hope these tips ended up helping you out, and I will see you all in my next video. Peace out, everybody.